Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's Career Chat. I am Krista Harmon. I am one of the Career Readiness Consultants at the Kent Intermediate School District here in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And I am thrilled today to have Laura Kloosterman. She's a landscape architect, and I know a lot of you young people just love that idea of being a landscape architect. So we're going to talk to Laura about her career so that we could give you some tips and inside scoop that can help with this transition. So just stop that for a second. Okay, we're still recording. There's always little technical things. So welcome, Laura. So just to get us started, take us back to when you were in high school, when you were maybe 15 or 16. Is this what you thought you'd do? Is this where you thought you'd end up? Kind of give us that early career path thinking.
Sure. So I actually did figure out that I wanted to do this in my senior year of high school. It's pretty lucky that I stuck with it, actually got into it and enjoy it. But yeah, I didn't know what I wanted to do for the first 3 years of high school. I just knew that I loved art and I loved science. And I didn't see a lot of overlap between those two things. At least back then. I think now there's a lot more career opportunities where there's a gap between those two things. And I think that's pretty exciting. My father works construction. My mother is an artist. I wanted to be an artist. It was the only thing I could do. But my father kind of gave me some good advice of seeking something that I could get more easily paid to do. So it's also clear that when I was trying to figure out what I was going to do, I had a math teacher my senior year who said, hey, I see you're very similar to this other student I had. Maybe you'd like to talk to her. She's at Michigan State. She's studying landscape architecture. So he put me in contact with this woman who is about 4 years older than me. I called up and she came over to my house and just talked to me about what it was all about. And it sounded like something that was something I would really enjoy. It had a good balance of a lot of things I was interested in. I think I mentioned the math and science, but also a good balance of being alone versus working with people, a good balance of being outdoors and indoors, and just always doing something different, not necessarily the same thing every day. So I liked that aspect and challenge. Does that provide a pretty good summary, Krista, or shall I?
Yeah, no, that's great. And I love that you've been able to articulate.
Okay.
Yeah, I love that you were able to articulate that you had the science interest and an art interest, and that those two things came together, because I think a lot of young people have that. And that you had a father in construction, which maybe was aware of a job like this, whereas some young people, don't know it exists. The other action item I just want to help the young people understand is that you did take that opportunity to talk to somebody that was recommended to you. And so those informational interviews are so important, because how else are we supposed to know what's out there if we don't talk to people who are in it? And so I love that you did that, and that led to these decisions for yourself. And I, again, thank you for being here today to give the same opportunity for young people, even though it's not live for some of them. So you realized that you thought landscape architect was a good fit. And so was that a 4-year degree? Did you have to do on-the-job training? Tell us about the education side for you.
Yeah, so for me, what I wanted to do, it's a 4 or 5 year degree. And most states, there is about one university that offers the program. In Michigan, it happens to be Michigan State. So I did apply to go there. And theirs is a 4-year program. I applied to a number of other places, and I'm kind of an oddball because of a certain opportunity I had to the University of Florida, which is completely out of the realm of Michigan, but they also had the program, and theirs happened to be a 5-year program. So I spent 5 years to get a bachelor's degree, and yeah, that's required for what I do. For architects, I work with a lot of architects. They are often required to do a graduate degree, so they have to do 4 years and then another 2 years to get a graduate degree. But for what we do, it's only a bachelor's, so that's usually 4 years, maybe 5 years if you have a special program where there's a study abroad or an internship. And I do have friends who do similar things to what I do. You know, I do a lot of larger scale stuff. We do campuses and kind of hospitals, things like that, but friends who do kind of smaller scale stuff, which I have also done in the past, and you can do some of that with only a 2-year degree. So if you're looking to just go to a, you know, community college or get an associate's, there are lots of landscape design programs at some of those that you can get with just 2 years. So there are options.
Are young people marketable if they end up with just a 2-year? Are those jobs available then, or are employers really looking for that bachelor's degree?
It just depends what level of work you want to do. So if you would want to work somewhere like my current employer, where we're doing a lot of larger stuff and I have to do a lot of, I would say almost more engineering. So I have to do a lot of work with grading of the land. I don't know if that's a term people would understand, but you kind of manipulate the slopes of the ground. You have to deal with the storm water. So when you get rain coming down, you have to deal with where the water would go, if it's going to end in a retention, detention pond, how it gets treated. So there's a lot more engineering with kind of the level of landscape architecture that I'm doing. And I have to be licensed as well. So there is, after you graduate, a test you have to take. And then they give you a license if you pass that test, and you're able to put your stamp on a set of drawings, and you're legally responsible for all of these things, like the engineering side of it. So that does require a 4-year degree. So if you want to do that level of it, you should do that. And if you wanted to work at a place like I'm working now, you should do the 4-year program. But you know, there are lots of legitimate forms of landscape design that you can do. They're just more on the plant side and more on the smaller scale. And those are open to anyone who just wants to do a 2-year degree.
So why don't you give the young people, because they might have an idea of what a landscape architect is, and you've given us certainly some insights already about a large scale. So why don't you give us kind of the spiel of what a landscape architect does and help them understand the different levels, obviously with residential, so that they have a sense of what might be the better fit for them, especially if they're not as sciencey, you know, maybe they're more on the art side.
Yeah, so there are a lot of different niches within it. So, and landscape architecture really is, I try and describe it best as anything that goes from the door of a building to, you know, the curb of the road. And sometimes it even includes the road. So you're doing the layout of all of that. You're laying out the sidewalks, you're laying out the roadways, sometimes you're laying out parking lots. You know, sometimes you're looking at it from a really high up scale and deciding, okay, here's where we put these buildings, and then here's how we want people to be flowing through the whole site. And then sometimes you're looking at it from a much scale and just doing the little details of how you want this pergola or this wall to look exactly. So there's certainly, you know, levels of scale there, but then there's also different things you can be designing. So I've done a number of those throughout my career. When I first graduated, ended up working for a design build, which means they both do the design work and they construct it. So it's a lot more hands-on. And we at that place did a lot more individual residences. So we would do the design of someone's home, which is one scale and one niche. And then after that, I ended up going to work for a place that did much more commercial work, and we only did the design work. So we were a place that only did landscape architecture, and we worked for a lot of different architects, and we would work on you know, all the landscape around a hospital, or all the landscape around a college campus, or the landscape around a school. So we would lay out where the football field and the baseball field needed to go, where we wanted paths for the students. Sometimes we would work on parks, playgrounds, all of bike paths, that sort of thing. I'm doing work similar to that right now. For a few years in between, though, I actually went and did work at a place that designed for theme parks, zoos, museums, and that sort of thing. So that's, you know, a whole nother realm of what we do. There's people who only work on golf courses. There's people who only work on hotels and resorts. So they just spend their whole time designing pools, and that's their like specific expertise. And they just are really, really good at that. So there is an opportunity to kind of focus on different areas. One of my friends, when I worked at the place that did the zoos, theme parks and all of that, she did go to Michigan State. She double majored in zoology. So she had this real passion for animals and was able to combine those two things in a really unique way. I'm sure there's more there.
That's great stuff.
Have I missed anything, Krista? Okay.
No, that's fantastic. It really helps young people understand that really the term landscape architect is really an umbrella term, and that with under that, there's so many different niches, so that they can start to think about where they'd like to land. Because I would think for some, they like the idea of the design and actually build, where they get their hands in the dirt or, you know, are outside more versus being the design. So I think that's such a great realistic expectation of what this career can look like. What's been your favorite?
For sure. I definitely love the creative side of it, and just anytime I get to draw. So that's not most of the time, but you know, there's probably a good 15% of the time I get to just get down and draw, and like that's my happy time. And I did really enjoy the theme park and that sort of design, because there was just kind of this crazy creative side of it, and you just could go wild and come up with things that were very story oriented. And I'm very interested in stories and telling that, and the landscape can actually do that, which is something people don't think about, but you kind of understand that in the sense of you know, a theme park where they do that very obviously. I think now I don't get to do kind of that crazy side, but I get to do a lot more work with the community and with people, and people who use the parks I design every single day. So it's accessible to everyone. I get to see my clients happy. So it's a lot more about relationships and people, and my friends and family experiencing things that I've done now. So
I would imagine that's a wonderful perk of your job, is that when you're done with it, you get to go back and show people, you know, that, hey, I helped create that. That's got to be very rewarding. Yeah.
Yeah, that was one of the things I actually, when I talked with someone when I was considering this career, that was something they really enjoyed about it, was being able to go back and see it and say, hey, look, here's a physical thing. I can touch it. I can see the difference from before and after. And, you know, I know that's also true for, you know, my father, who does construction. He's just does the handwork of building it, but he gets to see the before and after, and the physical. Here, come, you can walk inside this building that I've done and share it with people. And you know, I interviewed some other people when I was considering different careers. Some of them did graphic design and did packaging design. So for them, the enjoyment of seeing it in the store and sharing it with someone was pretty exciting too. So.
Yeah, I love that. I think those are things we have to help young people understand, you know, how they're wired, that if they like that kind of, we call it tangible result, that they can see it. Because there's some of our jobs that, you know, if you're working with people, for example, as a psychologist, you might not get to see that very concretely, that you're helping making impact on somebody on a daily basis. You know, it's a long-term relationship that makes change. So I think that's such an important piece of this. So I have a couple of questions I want to dig into. It sounds like, well, you must love going to places like Disney, because they're like telling stories all over the place with their landscape, right?
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Is that a mandatory field trip for all landscape architects?
Yes, in my opinion, but I don't think everyone loves that kind of design. So that's kind of can be kitschy, or so not everyone loves that, but I do love that. Having gone to school in Florida, I actually did work for them briefly, and got to be a intern with their they have a horticultural program in their parks. So it was kind of more physical, actually planting stuff, but I got to learn a lot of things being there in the parks. And yeah, a lot of opportunities like that are open to students. Disney has their internship. I think that's open to people who have 4-year degrees. I think it's open to the 2-year. I think it's open to a lot of people who are just doing, even just if they're just doing plant, say a horticulture degree somewhere and not specific landscape architecture. But there's a lot of organizations that have similar internships that are worth checking out and doing.
Students often want to know, like, how did you find your internship? Was that something that your college helped you identify? Did you have to go find that on your own? Help young people understand how that works and why internships, again, are so important for them to make sure they get during college.
Yeah, there were counselors at our university, so they were some help in finding these opportunities. I also made sure that I was very involved in professional organization at my university. So there is a professional organization called the American Society of Landscape Architects. And if you go on their website, they have kind of all the information you could want related to our profession. But they have a student chapter at almost every university, and you're able to be part of that. And that provides a lot of connections to professionals in the state. And that's one good way to get a foot in the door with internships. I ended up doing 3 different internships during my college experience. So I overachieved a little bit. We were required to do one. Not every university requires that you do one, but our university did require that you do at least one. I ended up 3, and types of firms. I did the one with Disney, which was kind of much more physically planting things in the parks. I did one with a firm here in Kalamazoo, which is where I'm located now. And that one, they didn't have enough work for me to be with them full time, but I convinced them to let me intern with them part time for a summer, and was a really positive experience. They did parks, and they did some work for the YMCA, the Girl Scouts, and I got to actually do design work for them in an office. And the other firm that I worked for was a really big firm who had engineers, city planners, lots of different disciplines. So they were kind of, each of those internships was a different experience, and I got to understand what I enjoyed. And I think that's the big part of it, is it gives you a kind of few months to get into a place and see if you actually like the work, because there's a lot of questions where you can the job and you're like, oh, it isn't what I thought it was. I studied 4 years and I regret this. I should have studied something else. So an internship gives you kind of an opportunity to get your feet wet, say, oh, this is what I like. I want to keep doing this, or no, this isn't what I thought. I want to switch, or even I do want to do this, but I don't want to do this kind of thing. I don't like doing something where I'm at a big place with all these people. I like something much more intimate with, a smaller place, or I like doing something more creative, or I like doing something more logical and technical. So you can kind of get your feet wet and decide all those things. And I think was a really important experience for me. I would say everyone should do that if possible.
Yeah, it's such a good thing to do in college. It just sets you up, like you said, not only for the self-assessment piece, but to give you a sense of where you want to work and those connections to actually getting a paid job. What about technology? Tell us about what landscape architects, is there certain software that you guys use? Is there something that students could be doing now to kind of dabble in it, to start to practice their skills, to see if they might like it, that might transfer off to the next level?
Yeah, there's a huge growth of technology right now in what we do. When I was in school, CAD was something we all had to know how to do, which is, a drafting program on your computer, but it's pretty two-dimensional. And more 3D things were becoming much more popular, but that has just exploded now. And my professors, when I was in school, they had some knowledge of CAD, but they had come from an area where there was hand drafting. So it's still really important, I would say, to have hand drawing skills. So I definitely recommend taking as many drawing courses as possible, but the profession is getting way more technological. So there are programs like SketchUp, which we use to create 3D models sometimes, and that's a free thing you can get from, I think it's on, if you Google SketchUp, you can download it free and you can make 3D models. Even as a student now, kind of experiment with that. We use Revit, we use Lumion, I think, is kind of a rendering software we use. Next, there's kind of a number of more rendering softwares. Some of them are actually used by the video game industry, so that's kind of an interesting overlap. It's becoming a thing where people need to see that 3D much more and more. And we will often take a 3D model of our building. I'm working with architects hand in hand now, so we'll have the building and the landscape, and we'll take a 3D model of that to a client, and we'll walk through it on the computer so that I can almost kind of virtually walk through the space before it ever gets built. And you can change things in there in real time and see these windows are too big, too small, or this tree is in the wrong location, and then they can get a really good picture and not have to kind of imagine quite as much, which is a little sad to me that people aren't practicing using their imagination as much, but not everybody can do that. And so these are great tools for allowing everyone to be able to see and decide. And yeah, anything you can do to learn more of that technology is going to give you a foot in the door. I hire a lot of interns, younger people who have those skills, I think specifically because those of us who are in the professional longer don't have those skills. And so we always look to someone who's younger to help us learn that. And if you can come to a firm and say, hey, I already know this program, say Revit, SketchUp, Lumion, and they'll say, oh, well, that's a skill we're looking for. And they'll definitely excited about that. So.
Yeah, that's really helpful. I have heard some of these digital natives are definitely helping the older folks with some of this new software, and that's such an asset. So young people, be encouraged that some of that game playing that you're doing definitely translates into the professional world, and you can tell your parents that you need to keep practicing on those games so you're ready. As far as you mentioned relationships with your customers, I'd like the young people to hear why some of what they called soft skills that they're learning in high school, like teamwork and communication and flexibility, are so important in the professional world. Can you help the young people understand what kind of skills you need around relationships and why they should embrace that while they can in high school to learn it?
Yeah, I think relationships are, and people skills are pretty much the biggest thing in almost any profession you go into. There's professions where it's more and less important, perhaps, but we are working on a team on every single project we do. So, I spend maybe half of my time just drawing and creating things, but the other half of that time, I'm either working on a team with 12 other people of all different disciplines. You know, there's an architect, there's an engineer, and I have to be able to talk with them and communicate and create this project together. Or, you know, another 25% of that time I'm working with a client directly. So I have to have good communication skills. I have to have good listening skills, and the ability to compromise and negotiate and help I think empathy and just understanding other person's perspective is really important. So being able to hear what a client is saying to you and understand what they really mean, why they're saying those things, so that you can create something that's going to address their needs, is important. So yeah, I say experience and teamwork, and any people skills experience presenting, all of that is important, and worth investing in. And I would say that also as someone who that doesn't always come naturally to. So, you know, that's not something to be afraid of. I would say just comes with practice. So even if that's not natural for you, just practice it is a great thing. So.
That's great wisdom, Laura. I really appreciate you sharing that perspective, especially for some of the young people that, like you said, it's maybe not their natural talent, that's something they can learn to be really good at their jobs. I want to know, we have just about 2 minutes left. What is what you don't like? Because you kind of shared that you love being able to draw, you know, in the creative side. Are there some things about your career that you don't like that maybe the young people should have a reality check about?
Sure. The part of what I do involves writing this thing called specifications. So I have to write a set of Word documents to go with my drawings. And this is just a legal set of words that talks very specifically about how something gets built. Like, here's the specific amount of sand and the amount of chemical and everything you have to put in to make your concrete just right. And that's not fun. It's part of the job, and it's not the biggest part of the job. So, you know, maybe 10% of my time is just spent doing much more technical things. And to me, that's not too bad. That's a percentage I can deal with. For the other percent of the time that I get to do things that are really fun to me. You know, I think part of the real check for any profession, but ours as well, is that, you know, clients aren't always easy to work with or always happy. So you have to be able to work through those relationships in a positive way and just recognize, you know, that's how life is. It doesn't make all of the positive experiences you get to have and the joy you get to have when a client is really happy, when the project goes really well, and yeah, you're able to see the happiness people have when they go and visit your park or visit the site and walk through it. So
I appreciate those different perspectives, that some of those spec stuff and then also unhappy customers. I appreciate that being put out on the table. I'm going to show them one slide about where they can get some more resources. So to finalize our conversation, Laura, I'd love for you to give a word of wisdom here in just about 30 seconds. So kind of your final word of wisdom here, you're going to have a chance to give. So think about that as I give them just one more resource to go to some of the nuts and bolts of what a landscape architect is. There's a great website called onetonline.org. And this will give you a chance to really study up of what a landscape architect does. This is just a screenshot I took of the summary report, and there's a whole bunch more information. These are really the categories. So some of the knowledge and skills and abilities, even with job openings, what kind of wages they earn. So I really encourage you, young people, to check this kind of site out to take it to the next level. You'll also notice these different job titles that are not interchangeable, but show you some of the different kind of specialties. Like Laura had mentioned, a golf course architect. There's different levels of this as a senior landscape. So become familiar with the different the verbiage that goes with some of this. And then I forgot to ask you, is it okay that I give your email out? I can cut this off, Laura, but if they have any follow-up questions, are you okay with that? Here's their email.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to answer any.
Great.
Yeah.
So that
And I would
Kloosterman.
recommend,
Go ahead.
yeah, that's the best place to reach me. And I was just gonna say, in addition to that website you gave, the American Society of Landscape Architects, ASLA, has a lot of resources for anybody interested in the profession. So that's another great website to go to.
Yeah, it sounds like that was pretty helpful to you as you were figuring things out, to go to that professional organization as part of college.
Yeah.
So I love that. That's such a great tip, because young people wouldn't even know to go to those kind of association websites. So thank you for that. And then of course, everyone, this is my email and our website if you'd like to ask me any questions or look for further career chats to continue your exploration. So please do. So Laura, it's been awesome. I've really enjoyed learning.
Yeah, it's been so nice to meet you, and thanks for the opportunity.
Any final word of wisdom you want to give?
Just do some research and talk to people. Don't be afraid to ask for help, and you'll find the right place for you. You know, this could be it, but there's lots of options out there, and everybody's got a set of skills that there's something that fits that. So